And welcome to Bronze and Modern Gods. I'm John, and as always, there's my friend Richard. Yeah, I got it right this time.
Here's John.
What's going on, everyone? Well, we've got a lot to talk about this week. It's I don't know, it's not been as crazy as prior weeks. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of quiet, kind of quiet.
Oh,
Couple big events happened though, I have to say.
almost too quiet.
Yes.
But there are some things we need to talk about. We're going to talk about 90s speculation versus today. What are the differences? What are the similarities? You have two guys here that lived through it the first time. So, what advice can we give you? We'll find out. Also, we're going to talk about the hot book of the week that came out of one of the many hot books of the week that came out of DC fandom. And always, our 25-year rule, we'll be focusing on Preacher and our underrated books of the week. But I don't think we can really start this show off without taking a second to remember Chadwick Boseman.
Absolutely.
That was a gut punch, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was totally out of the blue, at least for me. I don't know if anyone had any foreknowledge of this other than maybe the studio, but to have that kind of actor just pass away so unexpectedly was really a difficult thing to deal with.
And think about it. He has apparently been fighting it since 2016. So Avengers Endgame was during that period. It's just really a testament to him that he was able to get the work done that he did while fighting this awful disease.
And it really speaks to him and his character. I mean, the work was more important to him than necessarily the sympathy or sharing. And he got his legacy in place. And it is an important legacy as far as the African American community goes in moviedom. The Black Panther role, I think people may not understand the importance in the Black community of having that kind of role model in movies and that kind of lead actor in a movie. It was so important for me personally to see a character like that and the representation of Wakanda on screen, and to think there's going to be another Black Panther and he won't be T'Challa in that movie is difficult for me to understand how they're going to pull that off.
I was thinking about that myself, and they have to. They have to continue. He'd want it to continue. Maybe it's Shuri, just like in the comics.
I never thought of that. If maybe they change it to that, that would be interesting. No, there's going to be a Black Panther number two. The amount of money that movie raised was incredible, astronomical. So there definitely is going to be a second movie. Shuri as Black Panther to me is an incredible way of handling that loss and being able to move forward. So we'll see. We'll see what they do.
Richard, you know this better than probably anyone I know, but as a Black man and a Black actor, you have so much weight on your shoulders with that role. Because you got to do it twice as better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
If you mess up, no one's going to try it again because Black movies don't sell. And Black Panther was a fantastic Marvel movie. It wasn't a good Black movie. It wasn't a good Black superhero movie. It was an awesome Marvel movie.
Absolutely. I mean, Kevin Feige has done an amazing job with Marvel property and has really just pushed all of his movies to be excellent examples of the craft. But I think with Black Panther, not only was it an excellent movie, but it brought in people who are not comic book fans or are not Marvel fans. My mother, for example, who could not care a whit about either comic books or Marvel, was fascinated by this movie. So was my uncle and my aunt. So we get people pulled into this world that they've created who have no connection to the hobby or to the movies, but to the characters and the things those characters represent. It's really powerful.
Tell me what your thoughts were, because I have a lot of friends here in LA. When that movie came out, it was an event. They got the whole family together. They were going to go see it. And it was kind of like, please don't be bad. Please don't be bad. Please don't be bad. Was that your reaction?
Oh yeah. I'm old enough to remember the blaxploitation movies back in the 70s. They're fun to make fun of nowadays. But yeah, you were absolutely right when you said that this was kind of a one shot. If this didn't succeed, it would be a long time before we saw another Black-led movie. But this was so. I mean, I went with my family, not my mother. She wasn't wasn't interested at the time. You know, my kids came out of that with a hero that they could look up to. I mean, I would have loved to have had that kind of role model to have. Well, Shuri and T'Challa, I think, were excellent role models that came out of that movie. So yeah, it was really powerful. I loved it. I immediately wanted to go around and see it again, which is rare for me. I do not watch movies twice. I've seen it 3 or 4 times at this point. But yeah, it was an event for my family.
You could have ended up with Steel or Shazam. Thank God Marvel pulled it and Chadwick Boseman pulled it off. And I want to give a special mention to him hosting SNL, Saturday Night Live. He was so good on SNL too. And people
the Black Jeopardy and the potato salad. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. Absolutely.
I think people forget he hosted SNL, and you know that was during that whole period when he was probably going through this. So
Yeah.
that's not an easy gig. You're up basically for 24 hours a day for 3 or 4 days out of that week, working with the writers and rehearsing and everything. So this guy was a literal superhero, and I think he'd be missed.
He's a trooper, and he definitely will be missed. And I cannot wait to see Marvel's tribute, because you know it's coming, for this man, and how they actually handle it for the next Black Panther or the next Shuri movie, whichever they actually decide to make.
It'll be interesting to see. But moving on to more representation on the DC side now, it kind of ties in with our hot book, and I would maybe say plural, hot books of the week. And that is Batwing number 19 and number 20.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to say Static.
Static Shock. You know, that there's a movie. There's a movie that I think people are waiting for, because you got a built-in audience for that too. But Batwing, these 2 issues are kind of getting a lot of notice now because it's the first appearance of Luke Fox. He becomes the new Batwing in Batwing 20. So why is this important now? Well, during the DC fandom, John Ridley, one of the writers, mentioned that an upcoming story will focus on the Fox family, and it looks like Luke Fox is going to be the first Black Batman. So as a result, people went nuts. Number 19 sale prices are just kind of all over the place right now. They're anywhere raw from $100 to $300. Some 9.8 for number 19 are going for $350 slabbed. A set of 9.8, 19, and 20 sold this week for $1,000.
Wow, that's crazy. I can appreciate people's excitement about these books and the excitement about a potential Black Batman, but the mention of this particular character is for, I believe, either a one-shot or a limited series. He's not going to take the reins of Bruce Wayne from Batman 100 on. This is something that exists not necessarily in the continuity. So while I'm excited that there's a possibility of this, obviously, I don't know if I'm going to speculate on it for $1,000 for two of these books. It's too early right now to tell.
I also think that these books are really easy to find in back issue bins. I'm not sure every dealer's aware of this. I'm not sure, in middle America, if anyone is racing to their bins to pull out the Batwing number 19 and 20 and slap it on their wall. You may find some gold in them thar hills.
Yeah, me personally, if I found a copy, I would flip it immediately. I don't see the value in retaining it for the collection, because I really think that this is going to be a limited time that this book is going to have this inflated value. I could be completely wrong, so don't make any purchase decisions on my point. But for my personal decision, I think this is a flipper as opposed to a keeper.
Let me point out one thing that may change your mind. Miles Morales was not in the Marvel Universe proper. It was on the side. It was a different thing. Mm-hmm. And here we are today. So,
yeah, you never know. You never do know. But I do know that there is too much momentum for Bruce Wayne to just disappear after. Yeah. So I really think that this is going to be either an alternate universe thing, or it's going to be in addition to. But who knows? I mean, if they come out with an animated series or an animated show for a Black Batman, these books can go through the ceiling.
you're rolling the dice. If you get it cheap, I'm with you. I would never spend $1,000 on these books today. But that really just is a great segue into what our main topic is this week, and that is speculation: the 90s versus today. And this is really kind of crazy because you and I are of a certain age. I owned a shop in the 90s, in the mid 90s or early 90s. I managed shops before that from 1987 on. And you were one of my customers originally.
Yeah.
And so you and I had a front row seat to this when it happened in the 90s. Do you remember how it all started?
I remember the wild speculation on Superman when that happened. We were talking about millions and millions of copies of these books. 8 million for X-Men #1. I forget how many for Death of Superman. It was unbelievable, the numbers of these books, and people were buying boxes full of these things, thinking that they're going to retire off these things.
Well, here's how it started. The baseball cards were huge in the late 80s. And all these collectors were going in. They wanted the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. They wanted the Jordan. You saw all these people buying these cards in bulk. The company Upper Deck grew because of their high-end approach to cards. It had foil. It was really nice. It was thicker stock. Poor Topps was left in the dust. And what happened was, all of a sudden, all these baseball card collectors found out that they were not going to be able to put their kids through college, and the bubble burst. And so all these shops, instead of closing, they just kind of looked over here and said, wait, comic books, we can do the same thing here. And so all these former baseball card dealers started carrying comic books. All of a sudden, you had thousands of comic shops across the nation. What do you think these guys did to the comic book market? Same thing. They blew it up until it burst. You had gimmick covers. You had glow-in-the-dark covers. Ghost Rider had a glow-in-the-dark cover. The friggin' Spectre had a glow-in-the-dark cover. Holo foil covers. More 50. This is an important book. It needs a holo foil cover. Quasar 50 had a holo foil cover. Doctor Strange 50 had a holo foil cover. Embossed covers were hot. Real covers were hot.
And then you had the poly bags with the cards or whatever in them as well. It was a crazy era. And I don't think it was driven by the fans as much as, like you mentioned, the people selling the books and trying to drive up that hype and making a market out of something that just did not have that kind of sustainability.
I had a shop when Death of Superman was out. It went on sale. And I had a line out my door before opening, maybe a half hour before opening, in little downtown Elyria for this book. I had
I still have 5 copies, by the way.
I had 2 news reporters come into my store and interview me about this. I had the local newspaper come interview me. They then ran a picture of my dad, who was in the store, and identified it as 25-year-old John Hughes, which I really appreciate.
That's awesome.
I'll make sure I throw that up on the screen so people get a kick out of that. And it was great for me. The competition down the street, there were 2 stores down the street, within a 2-mile radius of me. They didn't even put it out at cover price. They put it out at $20. I sold all mine at cover price. So did I do the right thing? I like to think I did. I ended up closing 2 years later, while one of them's still in business now, so maybe I'm an idiot. Who knows? But these people were civilians. They weren't collectors. They were like, hey, I saw this on the news, and this is going to put my kid through college. And, here I am ringing them up saying, make sure you come back and read the next issue. Well, he's dead, isn't he? He's not coming back. This is it. And that's exactly where it was going. When the Return of Superman came out, people ordered so heavily on this, expecting, here it is, part 2. It's coming in a white poly bag this time, and there's 5 versions of it. And luckily, I was pretty smart. I did not go all in on the Return of Superman like some of my competitors did, but some shops everywhere were bankrupted by really going all in on this book and just sitting on crates and crates of it. I did go all in on Tribe #1, though. I will admit.
Oh, really? What about Turok #1?
Turok, Valiant was hot. I kind of went in heavy on Turok too, but the one that I really screwed up, there were two I really screwed up on that I will admit freely. Tribe #1, which sold pretty well. It just never came out again. And Shaman's Tears #1, because Image was so hot. That was the Mike Grell Image book that, came and went. Well, not even a whimper. This bust happens. People give up. They're like, hey, that's Death of Superman black bag book I bought last year. How come it's not worth $5,000 yet? Well, this is stupid. I'm not buying anymore. People were canceling their pull list en masse. I mean, I saw my sales dip. We were doing well enough. We had a good enough core to keep going. I sold the shop. It didn't go out of business. Just to be clear, I sold it, and it went on for a few years after that. But I'm kind of looking at this today, and I see a lot of parallels. Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, I can understand. Instead of having these huge, print counts, we have variant covers out the wazoo. 50, 70, 80 variant covers for some of these key books, and people feel the need, to buy them because from fear of missing out is key. But you got books that the day they actually are released are worth $300. So you're afraid not to buy these things because you're going to miss out on that book that is worth these huge amounts of money. Negan Lives is an example of a book that was released and immediately skyrocketed in value. Thor #5 is another book where I went to my local LCS. Fortunately, I had it in my pull list, so I got one copy of Thor #5. They were sold out by the time I got there. If I hadn't had it in the pull list, I wouldn't have got it.
Spawn 309, the Gunslinger Spawn, came out Wednesday. It's already selling for $30. I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah, and to me, I see a lot of parallels in that. I don't know if we're necessarily on a huge crash like we were back in the 90s. I see a correction. I see everyone is focusing on all these modern books, and there's all of this drive to buy these books because you can buy them for cover price, turn around and sell them for potentially hundreds of dollars. But there's still a core of people that are hardcore collectors who are still buying the Silver Age, still buying the Bronze Age, and once this I don't want to call it a craze, but once the attention from these modern books shifts back to the Silver Age books and the Bronze Age and the Coppers, the standard books that collectors put value in, we'll bleed some people off from this COVID boredom, let's call it. I got a COVID check and I've got a whole bunch of time on my hands. I'll buy comic books. We'll bleed those people off, but I think the core of the collector hobby is much more resilient and is more focused than they were back in the 90s. They have more resources, both in terms of information and even potentially money. So I do see a correction coming, but I don't see the crash that we saw back in the 90s.
Let's be real honest with ourselves. You and me, Richard, we've known each other for 30 years, right? 30 plus years. Mm-hmm. So I've known you since I was 5.
Okay.
We have a lot of mutual friends on Facebook. We have a lot of mutual friends on Facebook that used to collect comic books with us back in the day, back in the 90s and the late 80s. How many of those mutual friends of ours are now buying books again and are all in on this? They're joining us on Instagram live sales. They're watching this podcast right now and making comments on it.
Hey, Forrest.
Yeah, hey, Forrest. Hi, Rob Townsley.
Hi, Lottie.
How many of them will be around when quarantine ends? Because you and I, again, let's be real honest with ourselves. We kind of fell out. I've been buying books, every month. I haven't stopped since the 90s, but I haven't been all in like this, starting a podcast, doing live sales until the quarantine hit.
That's true. But, you and I have been collecting, as we've known each other forever, and we've been collecting almost the entire time. We were doing this before the quarantine, and I was,
but our friends weren't.
Our friends were. You're right, and that is a potential for people turning away once the quarantine is over. One, that's not going to happen for another year.
Yeah.
2, people who have rekindled their love of comic books, I think are going to, for the most part, stay. I mean, some of these friends that we've had, I know are in it for the long run.
Mhm.
And we'll lose some people who will just find other things to keep their attention once movies are there and things like that. But there's so much, there's such a richness to the hobby that I think if you've ever been into it, and COVID and this quarantine thing has drawn you back into it, it's going to be harder for you to pull away than just flicking a switch. So I see there being retention, and a number of these people will lose some people, and I'm sorry to say, that's just the way the things work. But some of these people are not going anywhere.
Here's my fear, though. Okay, you've got this, I would call it a really hardcore number of people now that are back in it. How many max in the US? 25,000? 30,000 maybe? I'm pulling numbers out of my butt. Who knows what the number is? I honestly don't know. Shows begin again. Cons begin again. We're already seeing it now that stores are open. Wednesday, it is a mad dash to your local comic shop to make sure that you get a Thor #6 before they're gone at 12:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday.
Mhm.
It's kind of insane right now. Who is going to get sick of that? Who's going to finally snap? That, you know what? This is just too much work.
It is. It is. It's intoxicating, isn't it? That rush. All Monday you're looking to see. You're looking at previews to figure out what you're going to buy. A month from now, and you're okay. So what's going to come out here on Wednesday? I want to make sure that I get my pull list right for the next week. And there's a lot of stuff. And then that Wednesday hits, and you go down to your shop. And you're right. It's like you're targeting books. You get there early so you can target specific books, because if you don't, they're going to sell out before
those 1 in 25s and 1 in 50s.
Yeah.
The first place I go right to the display case. At 11:30. Am I here? Okay, did I make it?
Yeah, but that is intoxicating. It really is. But I don't know if it's sustained. I mean, can you imagine people doing that and spending that kind of money month after month, year after year, unless they see some kind of return on it? Now if these people are buying these books and then they're turning around and they're selling them for a profit, I could see that kind of excitement being really, it is for me, for example. I love going out and buying, I'm specking on a book and I buy 5 copies of it. And then all of a sudden it becomes the hot book and they're going for $50 a copy. And, I could sell all 5 of them or sell 4 and keep one for myself. And, I've made money. This is something that's really exciting. But if I'm just buying books and I have multiple copies and I really don't have an avenue to sell them, or I try to sell them and it doesn't work out well, and, doing that month after month and just accumulating books and debt, some of these people are going to be turned off. The savvy ones won't. You're right. The savvy ones will be there buying these books, 30 minutes after the store opens, because they know they can turn around and make a profit at some point.
Speaking of savvy, I don't want to, steal your thunder, because you're going to talk about this when you get to your underrated book of the week. But I'm taking advantage of this market, and I'm digging into my bronze and silver keys that I don't have yet, because for some strange reason, Hulk 181, Giant Size X-Men #1, Spider-Man, those are always going to be rock solid. But I'm getting good deals on Avengers 4. Captain America 100. So this might be the time to take advantage of that softness. I also think you've mentioned this on the podcast several times. You've got a new generation, 2 new generations since us, to be fair, that these modern books, Miles Morales, these Kamala Khans, these new characters, they're theirs. They get to afford that $200, $300 first appearance, because the bronze and silver stuff is just so far out of reach for their income level. So that market is left to the oldsters. God knows what's going on with Golden Age.
Actually, the rumor is the Golden Age people are buying moderns. They're taking their money and they're buying moderns because they see there's a trend there, and they figure that they could buy in early and then be able to sell later as these movies continue. And that's great. But you're right. It's just one of the things I'm a big proponent of is not to get too caught up in where the puck is now. Look for where the puck is going to be. And right now the puck is in the modern age, and people are buying those modern age books. But you're right. They're completely ignoring a lot of these Silver Age books. But by ignoring it, I mean you go to an auction and there's 3 bidders, and you can get a final price below, GPA. And now is the time, if you are a collector, to look at these Silver Age, Copper Age, Bronze Age books, because you won't have as much competition as you would have had back in January, for example. So if you are looking to fill out your Spider-Man collection, or if you're looking for Fantastic Four, these books are now there's less competition for those books. And I think now is the time to focus on those, because eventually the pendulum is going to swing on the attention of the comic book collecting audience from modern books back towards a more centric Silver Age, Bronze Age. But moderns will always have their value. Like you say, these are the Amazing Spider-Man 300s of today that are out there now. But, Amazing Spider-Man 300 is always going to be worth money regardless. It's a situation where it's all or nothing. We can have modern keys and still have the bronze and copper keys and Silver Age keys as well.
And you know what? This is just us talking. We don't have the answers. We really want to know what you guys think. Tell us in the comments. Let us know on Facebook or Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods. And tell us if we're, really just out of it. I don't think we're out of it, because we are really I wouldn't say dipping our toes. We got both legs fully in the mod.
Yeah, I'm up to my neck in moderns. Yeah.
Right. But I'm curious, am I the only one that still wants a 9.8 copy of Supernatural Thrillers #5, The First Living Mummy? I very well may be the only person in the world that still wants this book. Jump in. Let's have a conversation. Let us know, because we don't have all the answers, and we're just sitting back like you guys and watching this wave come over. Now that we're talking about the crash, that leads us right in. Boy, this is just the most segue-ish podcast we've ever done.
It's almost like we've planned this. Yeah.
It leads us right into our regular feature, the 25-year rule. Yeah. All right. This week on the 25-year rule, we are talking about a book that came out in 1995 that got a lot of acclaim, did really well for the Vertigo imprint, finally became a TV show after a long, protracted birth.
And it's really been 25 years since Preacher #1 came out. That is amazing.
#1, wow. 1995. This is kind of after the big Vertigo explosion, where you had books like Hellblazer in the late 80s, Sandman, just these, Doom Patrol, these Vertigo books that were just really defining this label for DC. And then it just kind of, went on momentum. You had Shade the Changing Man did okay for a while, and then you just had kind of nothing. They moved Trans-Metropolitan over from the Helix imprint. People forget that started as a Helix book. It did not start as a Vertigo book. You had Preacher #1 by Garth Ennis, and it was pretty successful. It was a comic about a preacher who gets some sort of superpowers and decides he's going to go hit the road and find God. Controversial, for sure. It ran for 5 years. Eventually, after a couple of aborted attempts at a movie, there was a TV show on AMC, the home of The Walking Dead, that ran for 4 years. Again, it was the very controversial topic of a hard-drinking preacher with powers setting out to find God. Lots of people were scared of this property in Hollywood. It was too controversial and blasphemous.
It was violent.
Yeah. But strangely enough, it was on for 4 years, and I'm looking. Yep. Still here. The world survived. Strangely enough, Preacher #1 is still around $240 for a 9.8. This book was really hot when the TV show was announced, but now we're seeing some roadmaps here for these multimedia events that happen when something's announced. People go crazy. They stock up on it. Suicide Squad. And then after it has its run and it's gone, we start to see a dip. And that's what we're seeing with Preacher. Is that going to happen with Walking Dead when the TV show finally ends?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, you mentioned this rise and fall based on these properties. Yeah, and Suicide Squad is a good example of something else that came out of fandom, where there's a whole slew of new characters, and we are seeing those first appearances go get a bump. I just sold my Batman Adventures #12 too.
Okay. Suicide Squad, since we're talking about it, let's talk about it. you guys know the plot and the thing about Suicide Squad, right? It's nothing but a bunch of red shirts that get killed within the first 15 minutes of the movie. So if you're out there buying that Firestorm first appearance of a hyena, thinking, again, I'm going to buy my Ferrari in 20 years, keep in mind, the poor or weasel, not hyena, keep in mind, the poor weasel's probably going to die 5 minutes in. I'm hearing Bloodsport, Idris Elba, his character might not even make it to the credits. So
Jeez.
Gotta be careful.
Yeah, some of these characters seem to be just pre-made for is it Polka Dot Man? Is that
the Batman villain Polka Dot Man?
Yeah, it's that you're just waiting for, like you said, red shirt. Yeah, hope you get through the first 5 minutes of the movie.
I am super offended that you're making fun of my Polka Dot Man spec.
Buy wisely is all we have to say. Buy wisely.
We always say that. So let's move on to our underrated books of the week, since we're giving buying advice. I love the one you picked because you bring up some really good points that we teased earlier. So why don't you start?
My pick this week is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #2, specifically the second print. And I picked this because Turtles right now, as always, are just red hot. The Turtles just always seem to find an audience, regardless of, they started back in 1985. But every generation seems to find something about the Turtles that's appealing. So we've never seen a market where the Turtles issue #1, for example, backslide in terms of value. It's constantly going up. I just bought for #1, for example, there's a first, a second, and a third printing. That seems to be the pattern for these early issues. The first 4 issues are the ones that I see real value in. Those are the ones that are printed on not professional comic book grade covers and paper, but it's almost like a newsprint. These things are as amateur can be, but there's what appeal to them. You have nothing like this in your collection. There's no other book like this in your collection. So there's first, second, and third prints. First prints for #1 are astronomical, literally.
But the print run was like only 3,000, right?
Only 3,000 for the first one. I, back in July, bought a copy from Elite Comics 11, one of my favorite vendors, for $800. I thought it was over. It's a 9.4 is what I bought. I thought I overpaid, and I was a little upset until I saw the way the market was going. And Elite Comics 11, they understand the market. That same 9.4 sold on the 24th of August. There's a copy that sold for $1,799, which is an unbelievable kind of rise in value of this book. So all the Turtle books, those early books, seem to be going up. But people are focusing on the modern books, and they're buying all these modern books. And I've noticed that the issue #2 of Mutant Turtles is pretty much just no one's paying attention to it. It's an important issue because one of the main characters in the early days of the Turtles, April, I cannot remember her last name.
O'Neil.
Thank you, April O'Neil. She makes her appearance in this book, and again, it's issue #2. It's an awesome issue. The cover on it, I think, is really great. It's a wraparound cover. But the GPA on this book is only for a 9.8 is $289 right now. It's seeing a slight rise. There are a number of them on eBay, for example, and you can still find a second print for a reasonable amount of money. I just bought a second print 9.6 for $159. $159 for a Ninja Turtle from 1985. Compare that to the $200 that I saw people paying for sets of Thor #6, variant covers for Thor #6. In 10 years, what's going to have a better value? A bronze key from 1985 or a variant cover from a key from 2010 or 2020? I would guess the former. And again, I see the values of these early Turtle books they're undervalued, and I see there's a potential of the value of these books rising, maybe not as fast as the issue #1, but issue #2 has momentum behind it. I think 3 does too, as well as 4. It's a great time why the eye of Sauron is pointing in this direction towards the modern books. slip in behind, and buy up some of these Bronze and Silver Age books. Are just low hanging fruit.
And the turtles, the early ones, first of all, they're magazine size. So when you send them in to get slabbed, you're going to send them in as magazine economy. Sorry to break that to you. Can't send them in as a comic book. You have to pay that extra.
Right.
But from my personal experience, they're really easy to press and bump. So if you see lower grade ones hanging out your local shop, it might be worth the investment to grab that, send it to a professional cleaner or presser, or if you have the confidence, do it yourself. And it may pay off because that newsprint is really pliable. It's really easy to work with.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good point about pressing these. These are easier to press than these modern books nowadays where the pages will fuse together. You can be a little bit less accurate. I have fused many of and you can be more flexible with your technique with these earlier books. They're newsprint basically is what they are, and not necessarily even high quality newsprint. I have on issue number 2 that I just read here just a little bit ago in preparation for this. And yeah, it's amateurish, to be honest with you. But again, that's part of the appeal. This is the Turtles before they were, Heroes in a Half Shell or any of the modern permutations of them. This is before Jennica. This is before even the thought of a 5th turtle. This is the Turtles as they were originally conceived. And I think that is an important piece of history. And it's something that you can afford right now. Even buying that 9.8 at $289. While it's not free, it's not the $1,799 for issue number 1. So now is the time to buy these kinds of books. Like I said, there are a number of them available on eBay if you're looking for that as a source. Also on my comic shop has some issues there. To me, I would much rather spend $200 on one of these books rather than $200 on a book that just came out within the last week.
I tend to agree. I think it's just so funny. Again, you and I were there. Do you remember what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a parody of?
No, what?
Frank Miller's Ronin.
Oh, that's right. Okay. And the covers are even similar. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Ronin is like this completely forgotten book that people don't give a crap about in quarter bins everywhere, but the parody is like this treasure gem.
Oh, I remember I came in just as issue number 2 came out, and I just missed getting in issue number 1. And I remember the hilarity of the parody, and how out there this particular book was. There was no other book like it. Yeah. And I think it garners that kind of audience that it has because it was unique, and it drove a completely different direction for the comic book industry than the general hero in tights version that Marvel and DC and their ilk were doing at the time.
Yeah, to be fair, it wasn't just a parody of Ronin, though that was probably where the genesis was. It was a parody of it's in the name. Teenage Mutants, all the X-Men things that were happening at the time. Mm-hmm. Frank Miller's ninja obsession and Daredevil and Ronin. So it was kind of like this mismatch of things. And it's just so great to see that these two kids who made this book in their bedroom basically and printed it themselves, and now they have this multi-million-dollar empire that they look back on. That's America, people.
That's right.
So talking about smart investments and things, my underrated book of the week, it's a stretch calling it underrated, but it is Fantastic Four number 25. Now, how can an early Silver Age Fantastic Four book be considered underrated? Let me tell you, kids, here's how. First of all, you've got this classic Hulk versus Thing battle. I mean, you've seen this cover homaged, swiped, whatever you want to call it, over and over, parodied over and over again. It's this crazy Kirby cover with Stan Lee hype all over it. It's like I have to fill every dead space with a blurb about how this is the greatest piece of modern literature you're ever going to buy. I love it. But for me, as a Captain America fan, it's very important key because it is actually the second Silver Age appearance of Captain America. People don't seem to remember this book came out between Avengers 4 and Avengers 5. Avengers 4 comes out. it's bi-monthly at that time. Avengers was a bi-monthly book when it launched. So Avengers appear at the end of Fantastic Four number 25, which came out during the off month between Avengers 4 and 5. So you've got this underrated Cap key. If you can't afford an Avengers 4, I guarantee you could probably afford an Avenger or a Fantastic Four 25. Also, it's got that tough purple cover. It's really hard to find in grade. It's very nice, but it picks up every imperfection. The copy that I just showed you, this is how soft the market is. I would say that's a good 7.5. If you follow us on Instagram, you saw me post a close-up picture of it a few weeks ago, and people were raving about the condition. I got that book for $65.
Wow. Seriously?
Serious as a heart attack.
Wow.
So this is the time. You can have as many Miles Moraleses as you want. If I have the opportunity to buy a 7.0, 7.5 Fantastic Four, Captain America, Avengers appearance, Hulk appearance, Kirby and Lee key for $65, $60, I'm gonna do it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that you were able to find that book. Again, it's because of competition. There's a limited competition anymore because everyone's looking at the modern books.
And it's a classic. You're going to be able to look back at that book. Eventually, when Marvel gets their crap together and does a great Fantastic Four movie, there's going to be a Hulk and Thing battle.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And we're going to see all those classic Hulk Thing battle covers just go through the roof. So,
and there's going to be a Wolverine Hulk battle as well. Yeah. All those key moments that people have been collecting and fantasizing about. Marvel wants to make money on those, on your memories and your fantasies. So yeah, we'll see a Thing Hulk battle for sure.
It'll be great, and I can't wait. And that is more than a better place to stop for the week. We have been babbling on a little longer than normal. We hope you guys appreciate it. Please let us know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're not following us on Facebook and Instagram, why aren't you? It's at Bronze and Modern Gods. If you're listening on a podcast platform, make Richard's day and leave us a rate and review. There hasn't been a new review for a couple of weeks. Richard texted me earlier this week literally crying because there were no reviews. That's a lie.
And also happy belated birthday to Jack Kirby.
103 he would have been this year. Again, if you follow us on Instagram, I shared a photo of when I met him at the 1992 Comic-Con, I believe, with a little story there, so check that out. But yes, Jack, hopefully Jack and Stan are up there with Chadwick telling him what a great job he did.
Absolutely.
And we will see you next time.
Everyone stay safe.